Welcome back in our geometry script series. This time I believe we're going to make some projectiles, do some damage to some dynamic meshes, and probably do a little bit of a minor explosion just to see what we can do with geometry scripting. Let's get started. Alright, so before we get started in blowing things up, we're going to want to create a projectile class. I'm in a third person project. You can also do this in a first person. I actually think the first person comes with projectile set up, so you'll already be a step ahead. But if you're in third person project like me, let's create a new blueprint class. Let's go into blueprint class. We will call this an actor. We'll say BP projectile. We'll go in here. And I'm going to delete these just because they're in the way. Let's add a projectile movement component. Very nice. And let's also add a sphere. Sphere. So when you go into our viewport, we'll be able to see that this is a ball. You can change this materially if you would like. We're just going to leave it there. Looking like a ping pong ball. We also probably want to add a collider. That way we know when things happen and when there's an overlap event. We're going to adjust this radius until you can see it. I usually like to go just around the outside. Just around the edge of the sphere so that it is outside of the sphere's own collision in case that's turned on. So in our projectile movement component, we're going to click that. We're going to check initial speed. I actually don't know the settings. Let's just do 420. Max speed, let's do 2000. We want gravity enabled, sure. Rotation follows velocity. That doesn't matter because we're using a sphere, but that's what you would use that if you're using an arrow. Let's turn on bounce for fun. And that's about it for now. I haven't touched one of these projectiles in so long that I don't even know how this should be set up. Yeah, so now we got that base class. Let's just see if we can trigger it and see what happens. We're going to go into our controller. Let's ignore all this. This is from other parts of the series. I'm going to get a key event. Press. How do you even do that? If I just type in 1. There we go. Keyboard event. So if you type in 1 after right clicking, you get a keyboard event. Normally you'll do set up input stuff through the menus, but since it's a tutorial and we're on a time budget, just do it this way. We're going to create actor from class, or spawn actor from class. And our class is going to be the BP projectile. We want to have a spawn transform. We're going to get our controlled palm, which is the body of the thread, and we're going to get the mesh. Actually, let's get world transform. We'll probably want to cast. No, let's cast it. Okay. Cast to, what is it, third person character? We don't want to do this every time we press the buttons. So what I'm going to do is in begin play, we're going to create a reference to our third person character. So we only have to do this once when the game starts. This is generally a good practice. Although if you do everything on begin play, you'll probably load with a glitch or a hang. So let's promote this to a variable. Here we go. Now we can access this variable up here. We'll call this one player character. I actually like to call it player character ref because it's just a reference to it. We're going to get mesh, and then we're going to get the world transform. Get world. I'm going to do location. split that struct transform in case you want to modify that, which we won't. And then compile. So when we press 1, let's also add a print in here. We'll just say pew pew. So hit play and we'll test it. Oops, that's the map. So if you press 1, oh, it says pew pew, and it looks like it's spawning beneath our character mesh, so I could probably ride that. That's kind of funny. Can I jump and ride it? Anyway, so that's close, but it's not quite what we want. So we're going to adjust this world location. We're going to get our mesh. We're going to say we want to spawn in front of it. So let's get forward vector. And I've noticed with the third person character, I don't know if it's his level or what, but I've noticed that I've had to get the right vector, which is weird. But I'll just put that in there. So normally you'll get the forward vector, which is a direction. You want to multiply that. So think of it, let's get a float. We're going to make literal float. Let's see if this will update. There we go. So think of the forward director as a direction forward of the character, and you want to multiply the distance you want to be in front of the character. So let's say the 100 units in front of the character will be our spawn location. We want to add this to our mesh location. And let's see where we're at. We also want to, let's add to the Z value, say like, I don't know, 70, and then we'll plug that in, see how that works. So now let's test that. So if I press 1, yeah, see how it's off to the side? Let's do that right vector instead of forward vector. I don't know why that's a thing. It might, forward vector might work for you, but it hasn't been working for me. So now we press 1, there we go. That's weak though. We want that thing to blast off fast. So let's go into our projectile movement component. Let's change our initial speed to 2400 and our max speed to like, I don't know, 3200. Let's test that. There we go. So now we can shoot our balls. Ooh, it's not adjusting to the rotation of the mesh. Let's see if we can update that, because we have this rotation here. So maybe we can get rotation. Relative rotation maybe? Probably not. Get spring arm. Get target rotation from camera boom. That's what we want. That's also not quite correct because it's gonna so that's not exactly what we want, because we want to shoot from the mesh's forward vector. Anyway, this is good enough for now. I don't really, it's not important that it's correctly shooting in front there. Let's raise this to 90. So we go to the projectile. Let's change the size just for sake of, I don't know, looking better. All right, test that. Okay. If you notice, the ball is falling through the ground, so let's go into our sphere collider. We'll call this collision. Scroll down. We want to generate hit events. And let's just do block all for now on collision presets. Let's go back, hit play. It's hitting things, but it's kind of still going through the ground. I'm guessing the ground might not have the correct... Oh, do we need to simulate physics? Let's try that. Let's try simulating physics, see if that works. That did not work. All right, let's go into our world. Check the collider on this guy. Say we want to generate overlap events. We probably want to generate hit events too in our collision presets. Let's do block haul for now just because it's simple. This better work. If this doesn't work, I don't know, man. You're still gonna fall through the map? How? Wait, collision presets, block all. So we don't need to simulate physics. Whoa! Yeah, don't simulate physics. That was funny. Press play. That is so strange. Okay, so I found the solution to this error. It's kind of crazy and stupid simple. It's actually a trap if you ask me. So if you go into the projectile and you go into default scene root, you want to remove that. So just take your sphere and slide it up there to make the sphere the root of the object. And if you hit play now, the projectile should bounce. And that's kind of the way we were expecting them to work. So again, this isn't 100% perfect because our, like if our camera's turning this way, we're shooting behind, but if you're running around and shooting, then that's fine. The point of this isn't to get the projectiles to work correctly. It's more, to just test the destruction of the geometry script. So let's move on to the next step. All right, so our next step, we're gonna go into this folder. I have one called geometry scripts. If you've been following along, you probably have one as well, but if you haven't and you're just starting here, then you're gonna create a geometry script folder or just put it wherever you want, preferably not up your butt unless that's your thing. So you're gonna right click, we're gonna create a new blueprint class, and let's see, we want dynamic mesh actor. So we're going to create like a wall dynamic mesh, and we're going to use that wall and we're going to destroy it and stuff, but you can make whatever shape you want. BP, we're going to call it destructible wall. Normally for a tutorial like this, I would do the thing first, figure out how it works. But today I'm just kind of doing it live, and if I get stuck, I'll pause it, figure it out, and come back. So in our destructible wall blueprint, we want to go into the construction script, and we are going to get our dynamic mesh component, and then we're actually going to get our dynamic mesh component, or get dynamic mesh. There we go. We're going to promote that to a variable. We're going to call that dynamic mesh. Call reset, good practice, just in case you're modifying stuff in the editor or something. And we're going to append a box. So let's grab our dynamic mesh variable. Not set, we want to get it. Let's get it. So we're here, append box. Let's set the dimensions, probably X 100, Y 100, sure, why not? Let's make it taller. Let's make it like 800 or 900. And one of these is we're gonna want to change, but let's see what happens when we do that. So let's throw this destructible wall in. Okay, 900 is way too tall. Shrink this down so you can see what's going on here. Let's say 420 blaze it, compile, and let's go 50 on the X. There we go. And now our dimension Y, let's say 500. Gives us a good thing to work with. Good shape to work with, I should say. It's a big wall. Maybe let's not make it so big. Maybe let's put it like 300. Okay. Let's make it thinner too. 20. Is that too thin? That's probably good. So let's hit play. See if our wall's there. It's there. We should be able to walk through it because it won't have collision enabled yet, but this is a good start. Press 1. Nice. Okay. On to the next steps. Actually, if you want to set collisions, we can do that right now. If we get our thingy, get our dynamic mesh component, set complex as simple enabled, right, or click the enabled button. Should be good there. So now we should have collisions. And another thing we're going to do is we're going to apply tessellation, P&T tessellation. I'm not entirely sure how important this is, but in my mind, the way I see it, of subdividing the wall into more things, it's probably important, but it might be handled by itself. I haven't really looked into it too much, but let's just do this. Okay, so now we've tessellated it and we set our collider. Let's test that and just see if it bounces or not. Boom. Cool, we got a collider. So now we're going to go into our projectile class. We want to make something happen when our collider is overlapped. And right now we're going to go click on your collision collider, go down to on component begin overlap, click that little plus sign, and we can do something here whenever it overlaps, as long as our collisions are set up correctly, which can be kind of tricky sometimes. So just know that that's a thing. If you're having troubles, you're not alone. We've all suffered it. So let's say boom. Put this for 5 seconds. Let's make it like, I don't know, red, orange, red, orange. Test that will happen when we overlap something. Press 1, it doesn't do anything. Okay. Another thing we want to do, just for testing purposes, click your collision thing, your collision component, and we will uncheck hidden in game so that we can see that that is colliding. So in our destructible wall, we probably need to set up the collider to generate overlap events. See how it doesn't have that checked? Make sure that's checked. Generate overlaps is true in our destructible wall blueprint. Compile. Let's go back to our projectile just to be sure. Let's make sure that's also generating overlap events. Okay, that's true. Let's play. Because it's set to block all, it might cause an issue. We might have to change that, but let's see. Yeah, so that's still not overlapping. That's interesting. Alright, so I actually don't know why the collider is not working with the dynamic mesh. Maybe the dynamic mesh would need its own collider to generate overlap events, but I'm going to do a workaround anyways, and it's going to work. So sometimes you just got to force it. Like it, yeah, I'm not even going to say what I was going to say. Like a little bitch it is, you know what I mean? Okay, so we're going to create a new function or an event, say custom event. We're going to say trace ahead. Ooh, feedback, static, signal interference. Okay. So this is going to actually be a looping function. Do we have begin play? Create begin play. And trace ahead, we're going to do line trace. We'll do by channel, sure, why not? We'll get our sphere. Get world location. We're going to kind of do the same thing we did earlier with how we shoot the ball ahead of us. We're going to draw a line ahead of us this time though. So we'll get a forward vector. We're going to multiply that. Make this a float, make literal float. Right click and then go make literal float. Plug that in there. We'll say 150 units ahead. We want to add that to our ball's location. That'll be the start. Actually, that'll be the end. What we want is the start, is the world location, which is kind of the center. That might cause, oh, we're ignoring self, so it should be fine. If that does overlap with itself, we'll just get a forward vector from here and then do that. But we'll test that first. So let's say draw debug type persistent. No, let's do duration. And we should see line. Oh, first you gotta call the function. So we're gonna say, how do you want to do this? Timer by event? Yeah, that'll work. So we're gonna create a looping timer event thingy. We'll say it's looping. Drag this down here. We'll say every 0.05 seconds, so it'll be 20 times per second. It's kind of a lot. No delay. Let's promote this to a variable, just it's good practice. We'll call this our trace timer. That way, because later on if you have timers, you want to destroy your timers, otherwise they're always running. So we're tracing ahead, let's test. Press 1. See those red lines, like that nice bounce arc? So that's pretty good. Although it's not perfect, but we don't need perfect. This is a tutorial. So it does actually, notice the green lines. So it does have hit impacts when you're line tracing. I've noticed that, although the sphere collider didn't work. I could probably get that to work if we did a little more research. But again, we're on a time constraint. So this will be just fine. And maybe you learn something new on how to use line traces and loops. So now we're going to say if there is a hit result, let's say branch, we'll say our boom. Let's do once. Throw a do once in there so we don't have multiple booms. And in our begin play, let's put a delay. And we'll destroy the object after, like, I don't know, 2 seconds. We'll say destroy actor. I'm also gonna, for good practice, we're going to, what's the word for it? Invalidate. Clear and invalidate timer by handle. Destroying the actor probably does that, but just in case it doesn't, we'll do that ourselves. And let's test that. Let's go shoot our wall. Boom. So it says boom. That's what we want. Okay. So now we actually want to do the boolean dynamic mesh stuff to fake and mimic our destruction. Let's do that next. All right, we built a wall. Now let's destroy it. Let's go into our destructible wall blueprint. We're going to create a new function. Let's call this damage wall. Destroy wall? Destroy wall implies we destroyed the whole thing, but damaging the wall. Now we're thinking of like a philosophical question. If a wall is damaged enough so there's a big hole in it, is it really a wall? Or is that more of like a door with no no hinges? A window? Is it a window without glass? I don't know. Now we're getting weird. Okay, so what do we want to do? Well, when our ball projectile hits the wall, we want to blow it up. So we're going to do a boolean to carve out a piece of the mesh. So let's go allocate compute mesh, and this will do our mesh computations. So to that, we're going to append a box to keep it symboled. You can do other shapes. Let's do a box. Actually, I might do a loop that like mashes boxes together to get more of like a random star shape so we can get some sharp edges. And ideally, you could even do like pre-made destruction shapes, because if you pre-make them, it's more performant instead of having to randomly calculate randomly where these boxes are going to be. So anyway, Very cool. So we need to get a location of where to damage the wall. So let's do an input and we'll plug in a vector. We'll call this hit location. And I'm not certain, but based on my tunnel digging, example, I believe we're gonna have to do this little hacky trick right here where we get the world transform. And what do we say? Inverse transform location. And we'll test this. I have a feeling this will work, but I have a feeling it won't work without it is the thing. Let's split our transform so we can get our location and plug this little dude in here. For now, let's make our dimensions. I think 100 by 100 by 100 is fine for now. Instead of doing, we could also just add some noise to it, but that might be slower than doing multiple boxes anyways. So let's get our wall mesh dynamic component, and we're going to say get dynamic mesh, boo, and we want to do something to it. What do we want to do? We want to apply mesh boolean. So this is much like digging the tunnel, but instead of digging where our character was tracing forward, we just dig from where the ball was. And then we might even create a little Niagara particle system to blow some chunks all over the place. But not sure if I'm going to include that in this tutorial, as that is more time, and I'm sure you guys could figure it out, but maybe I will. We'll see. We'll see when we get there. Okay. And then after we do that, let's release all compute mesh. That's not right. Release all compute mesh, I said. Release all compute meshes. There we go. Okay, so we need to call this function, and all we need is a location. Very cool. So in our projectile class, show you that we're here. If we have that impact and we say our boom thing, we want to get the location of this hit. So, oh, I did a multi-line trace by channel. That's my bad. We don't want a multi-line trace. We want line trace by channel. I don't know why it does that sometimes. So if you did that as well, you can just change it so it's more correct. Make sure we're doing our draw debug for duration, if our hit value, and then out hit, we want to break this. And down here in our little drop down, we will see a location. I really hope that I'm recording right now. Okay, we get our location, and that's the location we're going to use when we call our destructible wall function. The thing is, how do we get our destructible wall if we don't know about it? Well, that's a good question. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to kind of cheat, and I'm going to put a reference to it in our, what do you call it? Player controller for now. So let's create a variable in our player controller. We'll call this destructible wall. I don't know if that's how you spell destructible. Ref. And we will make it a BP destructible wall reference. If you're doing multiple walls, you'll probably create an array of them, and that'll be messy. You'll probably want to figure out a better way to do it, probably using like interfaces or something. But for now, for just the test purposing or tutorial purposes, we'll do that. So we need to set it still in our third person controller. We'll do it on begin play. I know I've got all these things. After our third person character class, this is super lazy, but it's effective. Get all actors of class. And we're going to say actors of destructible wall. This is not the best practice, but it will work. And it's what we're doing. We're making it work. We'll do this for each loop, even though there's only one right now. And we're going to say set. If you had more than one, again, make this an array and then just add it to it. But since we're doing one wall, I'm just going to set that because there's only one. It should only run once. Slide this up, clean that up a little bit. So let's throw a debug point there just to make sure it's being set. See out actors, there's one actor, you can see it's a dynamic mesh and it has all this information, it's setting that, very cool. Whoop. So we can remove that breakpoint. So in our projectile, if we have a hit, let's get our controller reference. I would have done this. Of course, now we do this. Oh, well, let's just do get player controller. This is bad practice too. I'm like teaching you guys so many bad practices. Do not do this if you're doing multiplayer, because you notice there's a player index here. You're going to want to set, you know, the projectile owner, because you'll probably like have a gun class or whatever, and you'll probably pass the reference of who owns this projectile and then use that as a reference instead of get player controller 0. This is just for the tutorial. Don't do this normally unless you just absolutely have to. This is bad practice. I'm teaching you guys bad things. But that's not the point of this tutorial. The point is just how to blow stuff up. Okay. Back on track. Get player controller. We have to cast, which sucks, but is what it is. Third person controller. And we're going to get that reference to the destructible wall. What do we call it? Destructible wall ref. This is our ref, and then we're going to call our function, what did we call it? Damage wall. Very good. And we pass in that location from our hit results of our line trace. Boom. Drop this little point here. You can double click on these to add these little mover node thingies. Really keeps things nice and clean. So, bad practices, but bad practices that work are okay practices. Okay. Now let's test that. Now for the moment of truth. Usually if things work the first time, you should be suspicious. Let's see what happens. Oh, nice. So it's kind of working. I forgot to change the boolean mode. That's actually pretty cool. Well, here's a way if you wanted to like create some sort of step system. That's actually really cool. This bug is now a feature. Anyway, so the problem there is if you go back into your destructible wall into your damage wall section and you go into operation, you can switch it to subtract. And I'm going to make these holes smaller. We're going to go 50, 50, 50. Let's hit play. You're like, why is there why is there a circular or square hole when you're shooting a spherical mesh? Good question. Maybe we should append a sphere instead. A sphere box? Does anyone know what a sphere box is? Let's find out. Alright, so you can also do this sphere box. It'll create a little hole, a little circle, and you can change these steps to determine how many things they have. So like, let's say we want to create a loop and like make this a little more random noise. Let's do a for loop. Let's say for loop. Actually, I wonder. Anyways, let's do this way. It's like either we add noise to this. Let's do that first. Okay, I'm trying to do two threads at the same time. There's two different ways I want to do this. One way we create a loop, we spawn like 3 spheres, different scale and different offsets, so you get a nice weird like unique shape. But the other way I think we could do this is potentially just add some purlin noise to this mesh and see what happens. Plug these in here. Come into options, we want to make our purlin noise, and in our base layer make that as well so you can see what we're doing here. Magnitude, let's try 25, see what happens. Frequency, I'm just gonna, I don't know, turn it up to half, see what happens. That's even better than what I expected. What the hell? Sweet. All right, that's cool. So what I did there is added Berlin noise to our sphere box, which I actually added kind of off screen. We got 6 steps on there. You can reduce that for performance. We apply Berlin noise to it and do the mesh boolean. Again, ideally you will pre-compute this stuff and like save it as a mesh, which you can do, but for this tutorial, this is fine. Okay, very cool. I'm gonna delete this box. This is too cool. Let's go to our projectile. I'm gonna turn off these trace debugs now. Turn that off. And yeah, let's test that again, see how we're looking. Cool. So that's how you could destroy a wall or mesh with projectiles. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, leave a comment if you have any information or if you want to see any sort of improvements in my videos or requests. I really appreciate it. We're almost at 100 subscribers at the time of making this, and I'm trying to get to that sweet succulent first 1,000 so I can keep making more content and tutorials for you guys. And I'm still having a good time making these, so I'll keep making them. Till next time, laters.